In today's video, I'm going to share with you 4 common patterns that cause weight gain during perimenopause. And they're not what you think. Most women think that simply their hormones coming down are what's causing it, but oftentimes there are underlying reasons why the metabolism itself is slowing down. Addressing these 4 patterns really can improve your quality of life and longevity. It's worthwhile, and I'll make it easy to understand. Welcome to Inevitable Wealth. First, what's happening in perimenopause? Well, a lot of women come to me and they don't know, is this my hormones? What's happening to my body? So perimenopause itself can begin in the later 30s and move all the way till you go through menopause. Menopause is defined as not having a period for a year. So for most women, this happens in early 50s to mid 50s, depends on your genetics, depends on your sexual health history, a number of factors there. But during this time, as the ovaries are less responsive to signals from the brain, they also produce less hormone. The first hormone to typically drop, which I've got on the board here, is progesterone. And you see this nice smooth line. It just starts to come down and drop. And estrogen will follow it. Estrogen, however, usually doesn't come down quite as smoothly. And you'll see in a lot of diagrams, estrogen will often comes down in this sawtooth sort of pattern where it's variable and it can shift quite a lot from month to month. Now, while this is happening, sometimes the gap between estrogen and progesterone can be rather large. It's something we call estrogen dominance. Dominant, right? Like there's a lot of estrogen, not a lot of progesterone. And the wider that gap is, can sometimes lead to this stubborn 10 to 15 pounds of fat, usually in the same old places like on the hips, lower belly. Women who experience this happen outside of perimenopause. Usually it comes along with breast soreness before the period, having a lot of PMS or even PMDD, having mood swings, painful, crampy, clotting periods, sometimes heavy periods. All of these symptoms can cluster around estrogen dominance. The only way to know for sure would be to test your estrogen and progesterone. For a woman with a normal 28-day cycle, the testing, you want to have those tested right between days 19 to 22 is a time in the month where they surge together. That's if your period is irregular. If they're not, it's a little trickier to test for, but possible. So outside of the estrogen dominance, however, there are these 4 patterns that can slow down metabolism. And I'm telling you, OBGYNs, they're not talking about it. I'm going to explain that. I'm also going to explain how to know if this is happening to you and what you can actually do about it. So let's dive into the 4 patterns. Pattern number 1 is high stress hormone. I feel like this is just a trend anymore on social media, on YouTube. Everyone's talking about stress hormone, but few people actually know what they can do to regulate their stress better. Women come to me and they're just like, well, I have stress. I have kids. I have a job that I love. I'm trying to do things in the world. And they think in order to manage stress means they would have to somehow magically have no stress and get rid of these things. When in truth, handling stress is more about regulating. More about what level of stress you allow yourself to get to before you do something to bring the stress state down in your body. That could be breathing. That could be literally just taking a little bit of a break. That could be drinking water. Most often, if I had one piece of advice to give to someone who has a high stress state and this is affecting their weight, would be to focus on one thing at a time. How often is your mind racing to the next thing and the next thing? Or maybe you're multitasking and you've got all these tabs open and you're doing a bunch of stuff. Focus on one thing at a time. Let yourself be with one task at a time. If the monkey mind pops in, you have a piece of paper, just jot down, oh, I'll get to that later, so you don't forget it. But one thing at a time. It's huge. Why this matters for metabolism. If stress is high, it makes blood sugar high. It makes your inflammatory levels go up. Those in response, your body is like, I need to hold on to resources. And it will often hold on to weight right over the belly. So when stress levels are super high, we start to see a lot of weight gain right over the belly. And then just when we're in survival state, we're in survival mode, our cravings are different, the way that we're living our life is different, and it can kind of trickle into some of these other reasons that we'll dive into. How you would know if this is you. Often, people who are under prolonged stress for long periods of time, sleep gets really weird. Stress hormone is one of the hormones that controls your circadian rhythm. All of your hormones set themselves to your circadian rhythm. So stress hormone is like the conductor of the band for your hormonal system. And when it's off, you start to notice sleep. When you should be tired, you might be really wide awake. Like say it's evening time, you're ready to go to bed, you get all ready, you get into bed, and then bink, wide awake, can't fall asleep. Stress can be the reason why this has happened, that it's thrown off your circadian rhythm. And then you finally get through the night, wake up in the morning, and then I'm so tired, I can't get going. I need caffeine to get going. Or maybe just a little bit of caffeine and you were zinging off the planet because your body's ability to regulate that stress is not really there. I also see this for people who are like, I can't relax. I go to sit and relax and it's like my body's super tense and tight. My jaw is tight. My neck is tight. My breathing is shallow. These are all signs of the effect of chronic stress on the body. And just know also as estrogen and progesterone levels drop, a person's tolerance for stress is less. So where it used to be a normal stress level that you can manage just fine might not actually be as you move into this new season of your life, which is a perfectly healthy, normal thing. The goal should not be to be able to handle more stress. It should be to learn to regulate and work with our body and honor what our body is asking for at this time of life. Seriously, reducing the amount of stress and not just cutting out things that are stressful. You can still be super productive out there in the world, having friends, having kids, doing the things. Just working on the way that you regulate in your body, you will feel so much better for it. Pattern number 2, blood sugar imbalance. Standard American diet is high carbohydrate, high fat, low protein. This is not balanced. A lot of patients come to my practice and they're like, Doc, what is a balanced diet? Like, I don't even know what a carb is. What's a balanced diet? Balanced diet means that your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your fats are in enough of a balance that they give your body what it needs and the amount it needs these things. Proteins and carbohydrates should be roughly the same amount, where fat we need less because fat has twice as many calories in it as proteins and carbohydrates. So if we were to have these completely balanced, like the same amount of calories coming from proteins, carbs, and fats, just kind of rough balance for people. If we tested your genetics, we might see that there's actually a better balance for your body. But for a general population, we say if we can balance the calories that come in from these 3 categories, we'd call that balanced. For protein, what that means, what that looks like in a real meal, it's about the size and thickness of your palm in meat, in cottage cheese, and Greek yogurt, and fish, in things that are high protein foods. For produce, what that would look like is a full handful of fruits and veggies. For fats, usually we're thinking about the size of the thumb. So proteins, carbs, and fats. You have a little familiarity now with balance. What this means, though, for metabolism, your metabolism wants your blood sugar in a pretty narrow margin. But if we eat a high-carb meal with low protein, our blood sugar is going to spike really high. And in response, the body's going to put out a bunch of insulin. It's a hormone that makes your cells take up the sugar. And then blood sugar comes back down. So we end up with these high highs, low lows, and it's kind of like a little roller coaster ride like this. Your body doesn't actually thrive on this because when we're in high highs, it's too much. It's irritating the tissues. It drives up inflammation. And when we hit low lows, now our brain doesn't have any fuel because the brain can only run off of sugar. It can only run off sugar, not protein, not fat. It needs sugar. But if we're kind of riding this roller coaster ride, then we start to run into trouble. What you might see in yourself if this is the case, maybe you feel hangry. You ever hear this? Like when you get hungry, you get angry. Or if you get a headache or really tired when you've missed a meal. Maybe right after you eat something, all of a sudden you have a craving for sweets. It indicates that your body's not really processing carbohydrates very well. On lab work, you would see this in your fasting blood sugar being above 100. You would see this in the hemoglobin A1C being higher than 5.4%. You could also see this in elevated fasting insulin. You could see it in a variety of ways, high triglycerides, for example, when we're looking at lab work. Now, when our blood sugar is high and the average blood sugar is starting to be higher, or maybe the body's not responding to this insulin anymore, your cells have gotten wise. They say, I've had enough sugar, thank you. I'm not listening. I see your trick here. I'm not listening to this insulin. I've had enough sugar. No, thank you. We keep eating the sugar. We keep eating the sugar. The cells are going, no, I don't want it. I don't want it. It irritates your tissues. So your tissues are like, I have to find somewhere to put the sugar. 2 things happen. You're going to pee out sugar or you're going to put it in fat. You're going to store it as fat. As your estrogen levels start to come down during perimenopause, you actually become a lot more sensitive to the effects of this. You become more likely to become insulin resistant. Women become more likely to move into the category of prediabetes during perimenopause because the body just has less tolerance for this high sugar intake. And that's where balance in the meals becomes so much more important, and finding the right balance for your body, which absolutely can be done. So I'll reassure you, it can be done. Now, you ready for the third pattern? This one is kind of ubiquitous in our culture, super helpful to be keen to. Pattern number 3, inflammation. High level of inflammation in the body as we age starts to lead to degeneration, but it can also lead to weight gain. Symptoms that might clue you into that you have high levels of inflammation: brain fog, poor working memory. When we have high levels of inflammation, our brain doesn't work as clearly. Often inflammation is coming from the gut, and the gut and the brain share this super highway nerve called the vagus nerve, and it goes one way, it goes the other way. And when we have high levels of inflammation, oftentimes it starts to skew our thinking and clarity of thinking. You might simultaneously be feeling achy joints, and when we're inflamed, we retain water, so feeling really puffy. Maybe you notice just puffiness in areas where they weren't puffy before. You're feeling kind of achy, like you have rusty hinges. These can all point to signs of inflammation. Women moving through perimenopause who have higher inflammatory load can start to gain weight because inflammation actively reduces how well your cells can turn food into energy. At the cellular level, the food that you eat, your body's taking those sugars, those proteins, those fats, and it's breaking them down, and it's using their byproducts to make energy. So the actual electricity that runs through your body, your cells are making that and energizing your body. When we're inflamed, however, there's a massive fallout on that system. Think about an engine that's like overheating and it just isn't moving very well. It's not efficient in being able to just drive and go where it needs to go. Same thing happens in our body. So inflammation, in fact, is a top driver of aging, the processes of aging, and the top 4 causes of death for people in our country are all directly tied to inflammatory levels. So it's very beneficial to know about this and know, it is the weight loss that you're experiencing now in your 40s coming from inflammation. Super helpful for longevity that we point this out. We'll dive into pattern number 4, and then we'll get into what we can do about these patterns, I promise. Low muscle tone. So how many of you, honest show of hands, are regularly lifting weights, regularly doing body weight exercises like yoga, doing Pilates, things that will build lean muscle? When we're not regularly doing this, and it's totally normal for people to go in seasons where it's like, oh, sure, I've kind of lost track of this, or maybe I'm not doing it in the most balanced way, we start to lose lean muscle. During perimenopause, as hormones start to drop, not just estrogen and progesterone, but also testosterone, these are the signals in your body that made it to where it was easy to grow muscle throughout your adulthood, easy to keep it. We can take it for granted because when we're in our reproductive years, our body's juicing itself up. We can kind of take for granted some of these things. But as we get older, we really have to work at it because the signal is not as strong inside to say, build up your tissues, build up your tissues. We're moving into a season of life where we're more likely to be taking it a little slower, not moving quite as fast. We're not having to care for young children and having to like run around and do all the things. Yeah, your life may be different, but generally I think about biologically what our genes are designed for and what they're actually trying to accomplish for us. Biologically appropriate that we kind of slow down, right? Muscle is one of the most expensive tissues in your body. It's hungry. It eats a ton of calories when you're at rest. In fact, the higher amount of muscle that you have in your body, the higher you'll have of what's called a resting metabolic rate. That's how much calories you burn when you're sitting on the couch, when you're just chilling. You want a high resting metabolic rate if you want to stay fit and lose weight, right? Because then you're like, hey, I'm burning calories even when I'm sitting on the couch. At the end of the day, hey, my body's still burning calories, burning up the fuel that I ate. So keeping your lean muscle high will help keep your metabolic rate high just because it's hungry tissue. Not only that, but for longevity reasons, muscle is very, very important. Like I mentioned earlier, your brain can only run on sugar as a fuel, and muscle has a built-in reserve gas tank of sugar. Your muscle knows, like, hey, if I want to go for a really long hike and I haven't eaten anything in a while, I might need to find my own sugar. So it stores inside your muscle fibers, will store a bunch of sugar in the form of glycogen. Now, if you've been fasting for a while, you've been fasting through the night, maybe you do occasional like intermittent fasting, things like this, you get to a point where your brain needs fuel and it will want to tap into the reserves that you have in your liver and then also in your muscle. If you don't have those reserves, There are studies that directly link long-term poor brain health to low muscle mass. One of the studies actually looked at the size of your gluteus maximus, so the big butt muscle, correlating it to better health in your brain as you get older when you have a larger gluteus maximus. So just a little plug there for why some of this lean muscle stuff is so important and why we should think about it, care about it. Now, when we look about this, we say, okay, is this affecting me? Maybe I'm seeing some of the signs, I'm seeing some of the symptoms. What do I do about it? Well, I put together a really helpful resource. I'll put it in the description field below that shares both a mini quiz so you can get a better clarity, like which one of these patterns am I dealing with? Sometimes women have overlapping patterns, super common. So finding all the patterns that might be affecting you in your life. And then in there, I also share science-backed steps, kind of a high payout, things that you can do with your lifestyle and start for free right away to help support yourself and help start shifting these patterns. Because while out there, what's available, hormone replacement therapy, HRT, weight loss medications, all of this, the trouble is that none of those actually affect these underlying causes. Truly, I've worked with over 1,000 women in the last 10 years in my private practice, and I've worked with a number of women going through this and really, really struggling with the effects of like, okay, my body's changing, and on top of it, I have to be fat. Like, what? I don't want this. I want to be fit. I want to deal with this. And they get tempted by HRT and they get tempted by weight loss medications because it seems like a straight path and a quick fix. And while no shame, you do you, I also want to point to like, those don't address these underlying things. And these underlying things have long-term effects on you and your health and your quality of life. Because in all of my years, I have seen so many women go through perimenopause and the only symptom that they experience is that their period stopped. And that's it. Because their life was already balanced. They were already balancing these 4 patterns. And that's really what it comes down to. When these are in a really good place, oftentimes you won't have all the chaos that you hear about on the internet from people. So little plug, I would, in my heart of hearts, would love to see you go through this time of feeling empowered, feeling like you can be healthy, like your life is not over, but like, whoa, cool. It's encouraging me to be more connected to myself, to be more tapped into what my body needs and how I can work with myself and come to know myself even better. So that's my goal for you. That's my hope. May this be supportive. And if you find it helpful, please leave a comment below and let me know. All right. Coming up in the next week, I'm going to be sharing videos specifically on each one of these patterns. So stay tuned if that's something that you're interested in, and I'll see you there.